The whispers began long ago, tales of the land that belonged to my family for generations. It was a sprawling landscape dotted with wildflowers, rolling hills, and a sparkling stream that danced through the valley. This was the backdrop of my childhood, a place where my grandfather taught me how to fish, where my mother spun stories about the stars, and where my father built the homestead that still stands proud. But that was before the development, before the HOA, and before I felt the walls of my world close in. Chapter 1. The encroachment. It started innocently enough. One crisp autumn morning, I received a letter from the local homeowners association, HOA. They were planning to develop a new neighborhood, and my land was a prime spot for their vision. 35 homes, they claimed, would enhance the community and bring new life to the area. But as I read the words, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. How could they take what was not theirs? I could already picture the construction trucks rolling in, the peaceful sounds of nature replaced by the clamor of machinery. I envisioned the stream that had been my childhood playground being reduced to a trickle, hemmed in by concrete. I could feel the anger rising within me, a simmering pot ready to boil over. Chapter 2. The Decision. After several meetings with the HOA, where I was brushed aside like an inconvenience, I knew I had to take a stand. They spoke of profits and property values while I fought to hold on to my family's legacy. They offered me a sum that would make anyone else jump at the chance, but to me it felt like a betrayal. One evening, as I walked along the familiar banks of my stream, I felt a surge of defiance. I recalled my grandfather's stories about the power of water and nature. It was then I made a decision, one that would change everything. I would open the dam. Chapter 3. The Plan. The dam had been built years ago to manage the flow of the stream, a simple structure made of rocks and clay. Over the years, I had maintained it, always aware of its importance. I began gathering my tools, a mix of nostalgia and urgency coursing through me. As I worked under the fading light, I thought about the homes that would soon rise on my land. I imagined families moving in, children playing in yards where my grandfather had once cultivated crops. Would they understand the history that lay beneath their foundations? The dam was a symbol of my family's connection to the land, a way to channel nature's power. I knew that by opening it, I could flood the area, at least temporarily, and delay construction. I could send a message to the HOA, a message that said this land was mine, and I would not go quietly. Chapter 4. The Night Before. That night I lay in bed, restless. The stars twinkled outside my window, a cosmic reminder of the battles fought and won. I thought of my grandfather, of his laughter, and of the love he poured into this land. I could almost hear his voice urging me to protect it. As dawn broke, I rose with a sense of purpose. I made my way to the dam, adrenaline coursing through my veins. With each step, I felt the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. Chapter 5. The Release. As I unlatched the gate, the water surged forward, rushing out with a roar. The sound echoed through the valley, a primal symphony of nature reclaiming its territory. I watched as the stream swelled, overflowing its banks, spilling into the areas marked for development. I stood at the water's edge, a mix of fear and exhilaration washing over me. I had unleashed a force of nature, one that would not only delay the construction, but also force the HOA to take notice. I smiled, imagining the looks on their faces when they saw the chaos I had wrought. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The morning after the release, I drove to the site of the planned development. The scene was a mix of devastation and beauty. Water pooled where homes were to be built, creating small lakes that reflected the sky. The construction crew stood in shock, their plans thwarted by the simple act of opening a dam. As they scrambled to assess the damage, I felt a sense of triumph. I had taken a stand. I had sent a message. But I also felt a pang of guilt. Was this the right way to fight for my land? Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The HOA called an emergency meeting and I was summoned. As I walked into the room, I felt all eyes on me. The board members wore stern expressions, their frustration palpable. "Mr. Thompson," Karen, the HOA president, began, "your actions have caused significant disruption. We demand you restore the dam and cease this nonsense." I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "This isn't nonsense. This is my home, my family's legacy. You can't just take it away because it fits your agenda." The room fell silent, and I continued, my voice growing stronger. "You want to build houses? Fine. But not on the land that has given so much to my family. You don't understand its value, and you never will." Chapter 8. The Community. The days that followed were a whirlwind. News of the flooded area spread through the community like wildfire. People began to rally behind me, sharing their own stories of connection to the land. Neighbors who had once remained silent started to speak out, voicing their fears about the development. Evelyn, the elderly neighbor, organized a meeting in the town hall to discuss the future of our community. "This land has been a part of our lives for decades," she said passionately. "We must stand together to protect it." As the community came together, I felt a sense of hope. The HOA was losing its grip on the narrative, and I was no longer alone in my fight. Chapter 9. The Compromise. After several heated meetings, the HOA finally agreed to a compromise. They would scale back the development and preserve a portion of the land as a community park. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. As I stood at the edge of the newly designated park, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The stream flowed freely, a reminder of the battles fought and the connections forged. I had opened the dam, yes, but I had also opened the hearts of my neighbors. Chapter 10. Reflection. Months later, I watched as children played in the park, laughter echoing through the trees. Families gathered for picnics, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. I could see my grandfather's spirit in the joy of the community, in the way we had come together to protect what was rightfully ours. I realized that my actions had sparked a movement, one that inspired people to care about their home, their history, and their community. I stood by the water's edge, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The battle had not been easy, but it had taught me the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what you believe in, and the beauty of community ties that bind us all. Epilogue. I still visit the dam often, a symbol of my family's legacy and a reminder of the fight I had undertaken. It flows freely now, nurturing the land and the community it serves. And every time I hear the water rushing, I am reminded that sometimes to protect what you love, you must be willing to unleash a little chaos. In the end, it wasn't just about the land. It was about the people who loved it, the stories we shared, and the future we built together. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. Chapter 11. The Ripple Effect. As the seasons changed, so did the community. The park became a gathering place, a hub of activity. Neighbors who had once been strangers began to know each other by name. Kids played freely, their laughter mixing with the sound of the flowing stream. I often joined them, organizing fishing trips and nature walks, sharing the stories my grandfather had passed down to me. One day, while teaching a group of children how to fish, I noticed a familiar face watching from a distance. It was Karen, the HOA president. She hadn't approached me since our confrontation, and her presence stirred a mix of emotions within me. I waved her over, hesitant but hopeful. "Hey, Karen, want to join us?" She hesitated but eventually walked over, a cautious smile on her face. "I've never fished before. Is it really as fun as you say?" "It's about more than just catching fish," I replied. "It's about connecting with the land and each other." As the afternoon wore on, I found myself sharing not just fishing tips, but stories of the land. How my grandfather had built the cabin, how he had taught me the importance of nature. I could see the walls around Karen slowly crumbling, replaced by genuine interest. Epilogue. Full circle one sunny afternoon, I stood by the stream, now a vibrant part of the park. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing through the air. I felt a sense of peace, knowing that I had fought for something greater than myself. As I looked around, I saw my neighbors gathered, sharing stories and laughter. I realized that my battle had not just been about preserving my land. It had been about fostering a community that cared for each other and for the earth. In that moment, I understood that true legacy isn't just about land or property. It's about the connections we create, the stories we share, and the impact we leave behind. Chapter 15. The future, as the years passed, the park flourished, becoming a vital part of the community. More families moved in, drawn not just by homes but by the sense of belonging that had emerged. The HOA evolved too, focusing on community engagement rather than mere regulation. Karen and I continued to work together, leading initiatives to educate residents about sustainability and conservation. We planted trees, built habitats for local wildlife, and organized cleanup days to ensure our beloved stream remained pristine. Evelyn often shared her stories at Co, and as the sun set over the water, I felt my grandfather's spirit by my side, proud of the legacy we had built together, not just for ourselves but for generations to come. The letter was straightforward. Dear Mr. Thompson, we are pleased to inform you of our plans to develop your property into a new residential area. We believe this will enhance the community and increase property values. Enhance the community? I felt my blood boil as I read those words. I had seen the plans. These homes were nothing but boxes, devoid of character or connection to the land. They would pave over the memories of my childhood, the laughter of family gatherings, and the beauty of nature that had surrounded me. I slammed the letter down on the kitchen table, the sound echoing in the silence of the old house. They won't take it, I muttered to myself. Not without a fight. Chapter 2. The Community Meeting. The following week, I attended a community meeting hosted by the HOA. The air was thick with tension as residents gathered, unsure of what to expect. Karen, the HOA president, stood at the front, her demeanor polished and rehearsed. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice smooth. We're excited about the new development which will bring more families and enhance our local economy. I raised my hand, my heart racing. What about the impact on the environment? The stream that runs through my property is vital to the local ecosystem. Karen brushed off my concerns with a wave of her hand. We'll ensure proper drainage and landscaping. This is progress, Mr. Thompson. We can't let nostalgia hold us back. Nostalgia? I felt my frustration boil over. It's not nostalgia. It's about preserving our heritage. This land has a history that goes beyond property lines. Chapter 3. The Plan. After the meeting, I drove home, my mind racing with thoughts of resistance. I had always been a quiet person, preferring solitude to confrontation, but something inside me stirred. I realized I couldn't sit idly by while they destroyed my family's legacy. That night, I sat down with a notebook and began to draft a plan. I would open the dam that controlled the flow of the creek, allowing it to swell and flood the land designated for development. It was a drastic measure, but it might buy me enough time to rally the community against the HOA's plans. Chapter 4. The Decision. The dam had been built long ago to manage the creek's flow, a simple barrier of rocks and clay. I had spent countless hours there as a child, watching the water rush past and dreaming of adventures. Now it would be my weapon. As I sat on the porch looking out at the moonlit land, I felt a sense of resolve. I knew the risks. Opening the dam could lead to significant consequences, but I was willing to take that chance. This land was not just dirt and grass. It was my home. Chapter 5. The Night of Reckoning. On the night of the release, I crept out to the dam, my heart pounding in my chest. The moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape, illuminating the path ahead. I could hear the distant sounds of the creek, calling me back to my childhood. With a deep breath, I unlatched the gate. Water surged forth with a powerful rush, spilling over the banks and flooding the area marked for development. I watched as the water spread, reclaiming the land that the HOA had marked for destruction. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of exhilaration and guilt. I had unleashed a force of nature, but at what cost? Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The next morning, I awoke to chaos. News of the flooding spread quickly, and the construction crew arrived to find their plans washed away. I watched from a distance as they scrambled to assess the damage, their expressions a mix of disbelief and frustration. Karen called for an emergency meeting to address the situation. "This is unacceptable," she declared, glaring at me as I walked into the room. "You've caused significant disruption to our plans, Mr. Thompson." I stood my ground. "You brought this upon yourselves. You ignored the community's wishes and pushed for development without considering the consequences." Chapter 7. The Rallying Cry. As the days passed, the flooding became a rallying cry for the community. Neighbors who had once been silent began to speak out, sharing their own stories of connection to the land. Evelyn, an elderly woman who had lived in the area for decades, organized a meeting in the town hall. "This land is not just property. It's part of our lives," she urged the crowd. "We must stand together to protect it." People began to voice their support for my actions. The HOA's plans were met with skepticism, and I felt a sense of unity forming among the residents. Chapter 8. The Turning Point. The HOA called for a community vote on the development plans. I felt a surge of hope as I prepared my speech. "We have a chance to protect our heritage," I told the crowd. "This land is not just about profit. It's about history, community, and the future we want to build together." As the votes were counted, I held my breath. When the results were announced, I could hardly believe my ears. The community had voted against the development. Cheers erupted, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Karen's face fell, a mixture of anger and disbelief. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and threatening. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. In the weeks that followed, the community came together to form a stewardship committee dedicated to preserving the land. We organized cleanup days, planted trees, and began to envision a future that honored our shared history. The park that emerged became a sanctuary, a place for families to gather and children to play. The creek flowed freely, its banks lined with wildflowers, and the laughter of children echoed through the valley once more. I often visited the dam, now a symbol of resilience and community. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support I had received and the connections I had forged. Chapter 10. Reflection. One sunny afternoon, I sat by the creek watching the water flow. I thought about the journey I had taken, the battles fought, and the lessons learned. I had opened the dam not just to protect my land, but to awaken a sense of community in those around me. The HOA may have had their plans, but we had our dreams. We had come together to reclaim not just the land, but our voices, our history, and our future. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the water, I felt a sense of peace. I knew that together we could continue to protect this land for generations to come. Epilogue. A legacy reclaimed. Months later, our community celebrated the opening of the new park with a festival. Families gathered, children played, and laughter filled the air. The park was alive with energy, a testament to what we had accomplished together. As I watched the festivities unfold, I felt my grandfather's spirit beside me, proud of the legacy we had built, not just for ourselves, but for the future generations who would grow up playing by the creek, climbing trees and forging their own memories. The HOA had tried to take our land, but in doing so, they had inadvertently united us. We had fought back not just for our property, but for the heart of our community. And as I stood there, surrounded by friends and neighbors, I knew we had created something far more valuable than any development project could ever offer, a lasting legacy of love, unity, and respect for the land we called home.